you. Councillors, can I have a motion to restart the meeting? Moved Councillor Kavanagh, seconded Councillor Davidson. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried. Can I also have a motion, as the time is now past 10:30, to extend the meeting by half an hour? Moved Councillor Bolton, seconded Councillor Kavanagh. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried. The next item is Oak Park Sports and Aquatic Centre, confirmation of scope. Councillor Kavanagh.
I move the recommendation on page 91, please.
Okay.
And if I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Certainly. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Davidson. Councillor Kavanagh.
Look, it's a little bit of a shame that it's so late in the evening because this is a really important report. And I know all reports are important, but some are more important than others. This is a report that outlines the scope for the development of Oak Park swimming pool, something that's close to my heart and something that has been in the planning for a long time. I'm pleased that we've got to this point in time where we're saying the amount of money that we're looking at spending over the next number of years to continue and improve this important community asset in Moreland. And I thank the CEO and her directors for their work in getting to this point, and looking forward to seeing us move even further in this bold plan.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Davidson?
Nothing further to add.
No. Is there any further debate around this item? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We move to social development. DSD 1015 family daycare, proposed fee increase. Move Councillor Lenka Thompson.
I'd like to move it with an amendment.
Oh, yes.
Slight amendment. So I'd like to move the recommendations 1 and 2 on page 153 with an added point 3, that Council review the rate if and as soon as possible there is a change in the federal funding to reinstate the community sport program or other similar funding.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, it's never good receiving a report like this when you have federal funding sort of taken away from something that's so an integral part of our municipality's life and looking after family daycare units. And certainly council realises the impact that it could potentially have on families using this family daycare. And certainly we put our thanks and gratitude towards the carers that provide this service for the community. So in acknowledging that, we would like to put into a review if the federal funding.
Thank you. Councillor Yildiz, anything to add?
No, I agree.
Any further debate? Oh, Councillor Thompson, of the Rob variety.
I'm proposing an amendment that we make it effective from the end of the calendar year as opposed to the beginning of the financial year, and that we cover the costs until that point. I only put that in as this will be brought into effect in the middle of the year, affecting a number of families that are unprepared for it nor aware of it. Whilst I'm bringing that to your attention this minute, I think if I have a seconder, I'll.
Okay, is there a seconder to Councillor? Yes, Councillor Yildiz seconds your amendment.
I am making decisions on the hop here, but I just looked at it and I thought all those families that have settled on their family daycare for this year, this is going to come as a bit of a shock, and I just think that we might need a little bit more notice in the little months that we're about to do.
Okay, Councillor Lenka Thompson. Yes.
While I appreciate the intention behind the amendment, I'd certainly like to receive some feedback from the director about the impact.
Yes, certainly, to the director.
Through the Mayor, ultimately we'll just have to go back and adjust the revenue that we've got within the proposed budget for next financial year. So the purpose was to incorporate it. That's what we've got in the draft budget at the moment. We'll just have to make some adjustments on the revenue side of things to the base budget in relation to that, in that vicinity.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion around Councillor Thompson's amendment? If not, I'll put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? declare that carried. We now move to the substantive motion. Is there any further debate around that? If not, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. DSD 1115, Development of a Moorland Urban Agriculture and Food Production Strategy Progress Report. Councillor Lenka Thompson.
Yes, I'd like to move the recommendations on page 157 with the minor amendment.
Yes.
Additional point. So read the recommendation as printed from 1 to 3, but adding an additional point 4 to notify all key stakeholders, including the Moorland Food Garden Network, of Council's decision.
Okay, thank you. Seconded Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Thompson, did you wish to speak to that?
Well, yeah, definitely like to commend the report that's come to Council about the urban agriculture and food production strategy. It's certainly a way forward. It's a very interesting topic that's generated a lot of interest in the municipality in finding different ways in how we can sort of find better ways of food security. And in order of establishing a steering committee, it helps to just acknowledge the breadth of experience that we have out in the municipality can help develop a strategy that will hopefully going forward commend the report coming to.
Thank you, Councillor
As a
Thompson.
small amendment that might be acceptable to the mover.
Yes.
There are some particular interested groups.
Can you move the amendment?
Oh, sorry. Okay, so it's simply modifying point 4 to be notify all key stakeholders, including the Moorland Food Garden Network and Sustainable Faulkner, of Council's decision.
Yes, she's happy with that.
There's some groups like Sustainable Faulkner, there might be others that aren't part of the Moorland Food Network.
Wonderful. Is there any further debate on this item? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried. DSD 1215 East Timor Partnership Project, Friends of Ilu.
I'll move. And I'll add an additional dot point. That the Moorland City Council Mayor, CEO and Director meet with their counterparts at Hume City Council to discuss the future of this partnership, including opportunities to change the focus of the joint allocated resources for this project to benefit the community of Ilu from material aid towards more sustainable measures like information, training and scholarships.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Tapanos.
Thank you. Early last year, I had the opportunity to visit East Timor along with our Richard Brown, who was then the staff member on behalf of Hume and Moorland City Councils, who facilitates a lot of these projects. And one thing struck me very quickly was that we had a fine tradition of supporting our district of Ilu with material aid. We had provided the building for a birthing centre. We had provided numerous amounts of equipment, books for education institutions, and a whole range of work that Moorland, Hume, and of course the Friends of Ilu committee do. And in thinking about the future, we need to assess whether that is still a requirement, because now that they are progressing as a nation and a lot of resources from Dili are starting to reach places like Ilu, the focus tends to change, and the focus, I believe, and from the need that I have seen, needs to change from providing this type of material aid to providing training, support and scholarships. These things are more sustainable for the long-term future of East Timor and for the Ilu district. So, so that's the reason why I have that dot point. I want to focus a little bit on the fact that the state government is encouraging local councils to strengthen their relationships, particularly now with East Timor, because they're going through a decentralisation process and establishing local governments. And we, as a very prominent and large municipality in the centre of Moorland, can have a significant role to play in supporting, encouraging and providing information to the Timorese government, but also to Alayo district. So I feel that we need to focus on this area, and this area would mean that our resources could be best utilised for the people of Timor-Leste into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Yildiz?
Fine with Councillor Tapanos.
Is there any further debate on this item? Yes, Councillor Bolton.
I certainly support Councillor Tapanos' motion. I think it is important that we reaffirm this. On the face of it, I support the additional dot point of point 3, and I think it is especially important because after independence, Australia trained a pitiful only 12 doctors compared to, say, Cuba's training of something like 300 doctors. So Australia actually really gave very little back to East Timor. I mean, I'm not saying Moreland, but Australia, when Australia had stolen and still steals so much of the oil. So anyway, I think obviously we can't resolve all of the issues through council, but I mean, on the face of it, the amendment that Councillor Tapanos has moved with the point 3 looks suitable.
Thank you. If there's no further debate, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. DSD 1315, Progress Report on Multicultural Policy Action Plan. Councillor Ratnam.
I'd like to move the recommendation as read on page 172.
Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Ratnam.
Just speaking briefly to it, this outlines a progress against the Multicultural Policy Action Plan and details a number of activities and initiatives that we've either initiated and coordinated or supported within the community. As a member of the Interfaith Advisory Committee, I'm part of a number of those discussions, and that committee is now looking to move towards our Human Rights and Social Inclusion Advisory Committee, and are very interested and excited at that prospect, and they hope they can join with other committees across council to continue this work. And just in highlighting some of the key things that we achieved in the year, we provided funding for the Employment Pathways program for people seeking asylum in the community in partnership with the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence. We held a annual Refugee Week celebration in 2014. Our leisure centres support a number of people who are seeking asylum in our community to access those leisure centres at no cost. And we provided free training and support to a number of multicultural service providers. And Moreland is definitely viewed as one of the leaders in this space. And some of those symbolic actions that we take, like our banners, the No Racism Stops With Me, No Racism is Welcome Here, the Welcome Asylum Seeker banners, really do go a long way to speaking the values that we all hold dear and want to see expanded across other municipalities as well.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Is there any further debate on this item? Nope. If not, I'll put it to vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried. Planning and Economic Development, DD 2515, Food and Beverage Growth Plan for Melbourne's North. Moved Councillor Yildiz. Somebody to second. Seconded Councillor Kavanagh. Is there any discussion?
Reports there.
If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. DED 2615, Built Environment Sustainability Scorecard. Moved Councillor Yildiz. Somebody to second. Seconded Councillor Lenka Thompson. Is there any discussion?
No.
Yes, Lenka? Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate the Sustainability Department on completion of this tool. It sort of helps the planning department and any development that's coming into the municipality to really look at different ways and how they can improve their application in terms of environmental sustainability. And it's certainly a big achievement that Moreland's contributed to this tool, this development tool, online development tool, and in partnership also with other stakeholders like the MAB and other councils. So I certainly congratulate the ESD department and the planning department for Certainly a positive step forward.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried. Notices of motion. Notice of motion 1215, Councillor Attendance, Australian Local Government Association, National General Assembly. Councillor Yildiz.
Thank you. The motion is Council resolve that Councillor Yildiz represent Council at the 2015 Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly in Canberra from 14 to 17 June 2015.
Yes. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Tetty. Councillor Yildiz.
At the council meeting held on 11 March 2015, DCS 16/15, Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly 2015 proposed councillor attendance was adopted. Councillor Yildiz was not in attendance and I was also absent from the council meeting as I was recuperating from surgery. Councillor Yildiz has expressed interest in attending this conference from 14 to 17 June 2015. Councillor Yildiz, to the best of my knowledge, has never not attended a conference after committing to attend, and it would be great to see him able to develop his knowledge alongside the other councillors who have committed to attend.
Thank you. Councillor Tetty? No. Is there any debate on this item? Yes? Councillor Ratnam?
Sure. Look, I don't think, I don't want to rise to damper anyone's enthusiasm and we always encourage participation. However, my concern here is about the process. We had an extensive debate at the last council meeting about this, and some of that debate included how many councillors do we want to send to the ALGA conference, not just this year, but every year. It's an ongoing discussion we've had at council about the resources we commit to various conferences and meetings that we attend outside council and the resource implications of it. I think in my first council meeting, when I came onto council, I asked that we send 2 people every year. We rotate amongst people who haven't had experience to give people a breadth of experience, recognising that it takes significant resources to fund somebody to go up to ALGA. So it's equivalent of $3,000 to $5,000, I believe, for every councillor to attend, and that's not a small amount of money, especially when you combine it with the number of councillors that want to attend. We had a big debate last year after we, I think, adopted resolve to send 5 councillors, and ultimately I think only 2 attended, and we actually lost some money because councillors didn't attend after committing to attend. I understand Councillor Yildiz isn't in that category because he has attended when he's committed to attend. However, we had an extensive debate, and there was actually debate about whether we'd actually allow 3 to go last council meeting.
I wasn't here.
I understand that.
I'll allow Councillor Ratner to finish and then I'll...
So I'm quite comfortable with the compromise that we got to. I was in favour of 2. I think there was even a suggestion of 1. We compromised on 3 for this year with a view to discussing it a bit further for future years. So I'm quite comfortable with the decision that we made. I believe, Councillor Yildiz, that you had the opportunity to ask another councillor to recommend your name to go forward in that original recommendation, but that wasn't made. Nobody mentioned at that council meeting your name to be on the list. So there were 3 names put up. We voted on that. And I don't feel like it's good process and precedent to go back and do a decision once we've already got the process in train to send these councillors up there. And 3 councillors is already a significant resource investment, and I don't feel like we should spend more.
Can I speak?
Yes, Councillor Yildiz is in favour.
I believe that, I've made some notes here, any councillor is entitled to attend any professional development session offered by council. I've never, as mentioned before, never not attended an event that I've committed to. It's a great opportunity, and I personally would never question any councillor who wants to attend any professional development session offered by council. This is one thing that I enjoy, and I'll explain to you why in a second. For me, it's not a junket. And let me go back a few years when I did, in fact, fund my own trip to Ireland, as did Councillor Tapanos when he went to Timor as well. I've represented council ethically and professionally whenever I've attended any of these events. And yes, the question is raised that, what do I get out of it? I've met with MPs after hours there. I've certainly done some networking, planning. I've engaged with other councils from various other municipalities around Australia, not just Victoria. And I think the educational benefit you get from speaking to other councillors is sometimes a hell of a lot more than you get from reading policy and documents. I find it a bit rude that any council, I'm not targeting anyone, whatever question and say only 2 can go, 4 can go, 6 can go. You can't demand that from any council law, because they're elected to this council, so if they want to go, they should be able to go. In other councils, this would never happen. I've had a chat to a number of mayors from other councils, and they find this quite funny and extremely petty. No council has the right, I believe, to restrict, limit, instruct or demand upon another councillor what they can or can't do, including the shutting down of a councillor because they want to express an opinion or want to go to an event. I have contributed to debate in the past. I have, in fact, I know the theme that we had last year, and I did listen to Warren Truss. I did listen to Governor General Cosgrove, and I do understand what this year's theme is about. So I've never ever not represented this council ethically or professionally in any of my capacity whenever I've attended interstate, locally, doesn't matter. That's the one conference I attend a year, and it's the one conference I look forward to attending every year, and it's one conference I want to go to. So to say to someone, you are not going, I find extremely autocratic, extremely demeaning, and I would never do that to any councillor. And you know what? Anyone should be able to go. And we've got an entitlement. I, as a councillor, have a budget to spend during the year if I want to attend these functions, and I do want to go. So what's the problem? I don't understand why it's such a big issue. And I wasn't at the last council meeting. If I was, I would have expressed this. But if you think that I'm doing this because it's junket, please, that is not the reason why I'm doing this. I actually get a lot out of those 3 days. I get more out of those 3 days than sometimes I get out of attending 6 council meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. The Speaker against. Councillor Kavanagh.
I want to speak against the motion. Firstly, can I say that last month's resolution was not directed at one councillor in any shape or form. Councillor Yildiz's name was not mentioned at the last meeting, right, in any capacity. And for some to say that it was, it's incorrect. I also agree with 90% of what Councillor Yildiz said. I agree that he's a hard-working councillor and he represents council well. I have no issue with that in any shape or form. But what I do have an issue is that we do have a right to decide who goes because it's not our money. Councillor Yildiz can go to the ALGA and pay his registration fee of his own money, and of course that's his own issue, but we're spending ratepayers' money here. Now, can I say, he mentioned that this is the one event that he likes to go to. I'm afraid I've checked the council website for the council expenses under the heading of training, seminars and conferences, interstate and overseas travel, including accommodation and travel. Since his election in 2008, Councillor Yildiz has spent $38,037.84. Can I compare that to myself, who was elected at the same time and have been mayor before? Only once, he's been twice, so I accept that. But mine is $4,635.31. Right? This is $38,000 of extra income that's been paid for by the ratepayer. I'm not saying that he has not represented council well, but I think at some point you have to say, no, the ratepayers had enough. You know, 39,000 is enough, or 38,000, sorry, $38,037.84. I think that's enough. I think in 7 years, and that only goes to October last year, I think that's enough. That's my only point.
Thank you. I'm not going to take repeat speakers except to allow Councillor Yildiz to close the debate if there are no further additions. Councillor Bolton speaking in favour of the...
I was going to either amendment or against.
Well, make a decision and do
I'll
whichever you will.
explain my amendment, which may not be acceptable, but anyway, I'll give it a go. At the last, that's right, I need to make the amendment before putting the argument. I was going to propose the amendment that Council resolve that Councillor Yildiz represent Council at the blah 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 government conference and replace one of the other councillors who was decided on by the March meeting.
I think that actually requires a rescission of the motion that was passed at last meeting that said we cannot replace any of the attending councillors.
We had so we couldn't replace them.
We did. So Councillor Kavanagh actually moved an amendment, an additional point at the last meeting, saying that none of the councillors who were attending and unable to go, in the event that Councillor Tapanos found that he couldn't get leave from work, could be replaced by another councillor. So Councillor Yildiz has to be added as an additional attendee, and regardless of whether Councillor Tapanos decides to go or not.
Wording here.
Yes.
So it says, Councillor Kavanagh's amendment is that if any of the selected councillors are unable to attend, their attendance must not be substituted with another councillor. That's if someone sick can't attend.
Yes, okay.
I'm just proposing. I mean, I personally believe there should only be one. I do tend to think we send far too many people to all of these various conferences. And I actually haven't attended any.
Sure.
I'm
Is
not
there a
championing at the
seconder?
bit.
I'll
But
take
anyway,
a seconder.
But anyway,
before-
I'm proposing that Oscar replace someone else.
Sure. Is there a seconder to Councillor Bolton's amendment? No. In that case, the amendment lapses and we return to debate of the substantive motion from Councillor Yildiz. We've just had a speaker against. Are there any further speakers in favour? Yes, Councillor Tapanos.
I'm going to speak in favour of allowing an extra person to represent council at Alga, and in doing so I must correct Councillor Yildiz because he was on the record, but council did fund a large portion of my trip to Timor-Leste. There were some elements of that, but were self-funded. Look, councillors, we sit around the table and we do make significant decisions. Significant decisions that sometimes cost or save money, cost or save council thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I never believe that we've reached a point, or we can reach a point where training and learning, particularly around governance, particularly around local government, is enough. I think that there is always more we can learn. I think there is always value in attending conferences, and there's always value in putting Moreland's case forward. In this situation, I believe that Councillor Yildiz's experience would be able to add to the conference. I think he also enjoys a lot of networks and supports, which could be tapped into by the other councillors attending, some of whom may be attending for the first time, and to enrich their experience and to get as much out of this conference for Moreland. So I do note that, as Councillor Kavanagh has pointed out, and I believe my travel budget's probably not too dissimilar to Councillor Yildiz, that we do put in the budget each and every year a budget for training. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, through the Mayor, probably Narina, I don't think we've expended that budget for the 2014-15 year. It would be good to get an answer to that. And if we haven't, then what is wrong with actually using it? The financial year is almost up. Sending another person to conference. If that's going to improve the decision making of council as a whole, I think that is good money well spent.
I'm advised that we have not exceeded that budget. And our most recent budget report also noted a significant saving in other things such as vehicle allowance, because the last two subsequent mayors have chosen not to have cars. So there's a number of savings that we've made in relation to councillor allowances. Is there any further debate on this item? If not, I'll allow the mover to close. Yes, Councillor Yildiz.
I'm flabbergasted, really. Look, the reality is I'm happy to give my portion of whatever the allowance is to Councillor Yildiz. I won't be in the country, so I won't be able to attend. But I am actually a very big believer in education. And I think that any way that you can improve yourself and gain other experiences from other people's experiences in other councils is incredibly important. We all come from very different backgrounds. We are educated to different degrees. We have different networks and different experiences, and maybe we don't all have people that we can discuss things that are going on in other councils around Australia. I was lucky to come from the union that covered local government, so I have got a little bit of knowledge about some things, not everything, but some things, and from a different perspective than what some of you people have got, obviously. I think it's really important that we don't look at it just as, spending ratepayers' money unnecessarily, because I think that it helps us make the best decisions we can possibly make. And I would love to see, if people want to attend those sort of things, I think that they should be given access to do that. I'm not saying let's, all go at once, but the other point is that I'd like to see proper reports come back from these things so that we can all learn from those. And sending 3 or 4 people to that and having different perspectives of different things is actually really important as well. That's my perspective, because I think that education is really important and professional development, especially when you're decision making the way we do, is very important.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. I'll now put it to the vote. All those in favour? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? 3, 4. I declare that carried.
I'll call for a division, please.
So division has been called by Councillor Yildiz. So can I ask all those who voted in favour of the motion to raise their hands? And all those against? Good. Thank you. Next, notice of motion 1315, rotation of council meetings. Councillor Bolton.
Okay, that's me. That council returns to rotating council meetings between Fawkner, Glenroy, Brunswick and Coburg, beginning with the May council meeting.
Okay. Seconded, Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Bolton.
I must admit I was a bit flabbergasted that council moved to cease the practice of rotating council meetings, because yes, we may have live streaming, but there's a whole layer of residents who do not use live streaming. Some people don't even have computers in their home and will use our libraries and so forth to access computers, or they may not have the bandwidth or may not even necessarily know how to use the internet. There is a layer of people, of residents, who attend council meetings when they're held in the local areas. Glenroy, Fawkner, I imagine Brunswick, I don't know the Brunswick people as well. And, you know, certainly, for instance, there's one resident who has tried to access meetings who can't get to Coburg, who has a motorised scooter, and of course you can't get her on the bus up those steps. So actually, by moving to locate all of our meetings in Coburg Council chambers and just relying on live streaming excludes a whole layer of people. And I think it is very important to hear from a range of residents. And I think the residents' question time at the beginning of the meeting is quite important for us to be able to hear direct from people, not just via an anonymous seeming email, but directly from people about their concerns. And I think it does have an impact on us. There are all sorts of points that people raise that they might not raise in the written form. And I just think this is, a really bad decision that we've made, and I think we should revert to a much more democratic process of rotating around the Fawkner, Glenroy, Brunswick and as well as Coburg.
Thank you. Councillor Yildiz.
Thank you, Sue, for putting that forward. I agree with what Councillor Bolton's just said. I take it a bit further. We're local government. We should be about local. We should actually, enable people to participate. And if that's sitting in a drafty hall in the middle of winter, well, so be it. That's what we do, because that's who we are. We are representing people, residents who we see up the street. And you know what? It might actually get us into gear so we upgrade those assets so that those people don't have to go into those halls with their other you know, the other things they do, like the senior citizens place in Glenroy, where it's freezing cold and drafty. Maybe it just shows us what we should be doing and where we should be focusing. But really, we are local government. We're about local, and we're about opening up, you know, a voice to our residents, and they should be able to come and see us directly.
Okay, councillors, I do note that the time is 11:10. I've been lax in checking the time. Can I have a motion to extend the meeting by half an hour? Moved Councillor Gillies, seconded Councillor Bolton. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Is there a speaker against Councillor Bolton's notice of motion? Councillor Rob Thompson.
Whilst I agree with the sentiment, without exception, at the beginning of last year when we did this, every council meeting we had a motion put forward that referred to the other end of the municipality. So when we were in the north, we were talking about subjects that were in the south, and those residents that were wanting to come to the council meetings were coming from Brunswick all the way to Glenroy, or from Fawkner all the way to Brunswick. A central location makes sense, a central location that can accommodate council and can accommodate a large chamber, and a central location that we have spent an enormous amount of money on to facilitate a larger audience to view council. Council seems to make sense. Whilst I understand that there are a few people that are unable to make it due to circumstances, these facilities are still much easier for people to get access to when they are able to get here.
Is there a speaker in favour? No? I might speak against briefly as well. And previously I've spoken in favour of this motion on 2 separate occasions because, like Councillor Bolton, I agree that it is important that we get out to the different wards of the municipality, obviously representing the South Ward. I very much enjoyed when we got down to Brunswick for our council meetings. Having said that though, I think that once council has taken the opportunity to vote on something, continuing to come back to it until we get the result that we want is not necessarily the best process of addressing an outcome that we didn't want. And on top of that, I would say that certainly tonight we've seen the success of the media that we've implemented to allow people at home to watch the council meetings. I know that I've been inundated with Facebook comments and texts and comments from people who aren't otherwise able to make it to our council meeting, both residents and officers who have enjoyed the fact that we are live streaming this evening's proceedings. So I think that the fact that we do have that technology available to us here, it's not just about cold and drafty halls, it's about the fact that we have access to this technology to allow people who are not mobile enough to come to Glenroy or to Fawkner or to Brunswick to be able to sit in their homes and watch what we're doing and the decisions that we're making. Yes, Councillor Ratnam.
I'd like also to speak against the motion and concurring with what Councillor Thompson just mentioned and was echoed by the Mayor. I'm not against the sentiment of this motion, and we discussed it at the original time when this, at the end of last year, when we looked at our meeting cycle for the following year. I've always approached this as a trial, given the new technology we were about to trial and the new form of taking council meetings out to the community was about to be trialled. I think we have to give the trial a good go before we abandon it or replace it with something else. Yes, it's a significant departing from what we've done previously with rotating, which I'm a big supporter of. However, we've also got to give new forms of participation a chance to take hold. So there will be people who will be able to participate in council meetings, but maybe it's passive participation, but watching it, who otherwise would not be able to participate. It might be people who don't have the time to come to a council meeting and otherwise are able, or it might be people with mobility issues who aren't able to get to council meeting, whether it's in their neighbourhood or not. I'm not saying that addresses all the questions, and I totally sympathise with the sentiment behind this, but I think it is worth us giving a go of 12 months to see how this works, look at what the participation, look at what the viewing rates are like, look at the community feedback around it, think about some alternative ways that we can redress some of the barriers that we're finding if people are finding it hard to get to Coburg. Very open to that, but I think we've got to give it a go the last few years I've been studying young people's participation, and number one thing they're saying in the research is they want new ways to participate in places like government, and they don't necessarily won't come to a council meeting, but they might look at this online. And I would love if this trial resulted in a few young people dialing into, tuning into our webcast on a couple of occasions to see what local government is like. So I hope, I'm really keen to see what happens as the year progresses, but very open to the idea of broadening out the participation to get as many people participating in as many ways as possible with local government.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Kavanagh.
I know it's late, but I just have a different point. My point is I like the fact that we're at Coburg and in the chambers, because I believe that both the councillors and the public gallery respect the chambers, and the behaviour in the chambers is much better. I really believe that. I honestly believe that if the last motion had been moved at Glenroy or at Faulkner, and the lax attitude that we have because we're in a hall rather than the council chambers, I believe it would have descended. In fact, it was a very dignified debate, as it should be. So I think the fact that we're in the council chambers adds a lot of dignity to the meeting and adds a lot of respect both from this side of the table and from the public gallery.
Is there any further debate before I allow Councillor Bolton to close the... No, Councillor Bolton.
Well, I think by keeping it in Coburg, because it's televised or live streamed, basically it privileges some residents over others. And I mean, the council already has a lot of social media, does a lot of social media. But there's a layer of residents you won't even know aren't participating in council meetings, aren't able to access council meetings because they won't be there. They've got no access to computers. That's why Coburg Library, Glenroy Library, Faulkner Library, one of the most popular things in the libraries is the computer access. And the reason for that is because there are a lot of people who aren't hip people who can't necessarily afford broadband or computers in their home. So it's actually a very discriminatory policy, I think, that we have adopted by insisting that all council meetings be in the Coburg Council chambers. I don't agree with Councillor Kavanagh that the meetings are any different. I think there's just as much respect or disrespect shown at all of the council meetings, regardless of where they're located. I think that's just a side issue.
No.
But it is an issue. I do remember a resident who wanted to get to a council meeting in Coburg, and he was on a scooter. And, it's very different just being able to trot up and down Sydney Road on the tram compared to coming from much further away, not being on quite such a centralised transport spine. I personally think this is a very discriminatory policy. I mean, I do support using internet and social media and so forth to provide an extra level of engagement, but I think we've just excluded a whole lot of residents from participation in council meetings. I think just a little Twitter compared to a resident being able to come and argue their case is very different.
Now that Councillor Bolton's closed the debate, can I move an amendment? No, okay. In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Oh. 1, 2, 3. All those against? I declare that lost. The next item is NOM 1415, waiver of security guard requirement for Indigenous Social Justice Association.
This is a council resolves to waive the requirement for the Indigenous Social Justice Association to hire security guards for their public meeting at the Brunswick Town Hall on 18th of April 2015. And a second point, that a report be presented to council reviewing the criteria for requiring the hire of security guards for events being held in council facilities.
Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Bolton.
I just think, I'm not sure when this policy came in Moreland, it never used to exist. I understand this policy of hiring security guards was related to risky events. But I've been to a whole lot of events, just simple little old public meetings where nothing untoward happens, and groups have been forced to hire security guards. And on a couple of occasions, like there was some sort of climate meeting in council where we waived the security requirement, and the council hired the security guards, and the security guards are basically bored out of their brains just watching this peaceful little event. And I think this policy needs to be reviewed, because I don't think it might have been introduced with a view to making events safer, but it's so rare that anything happens at a public meeting, or even a lot of other functions, evening sort of more entertainment fundraiser type functions for various worthy causes, that I just think there needs to be some better criteria for really only requiring this if there are real indications it's going to be a risky event. I certainly think for the Indigenous Social Justice Association, it'll be just another routine public meeting, where it's extremely unlikely there'll be any kind of risky thing happening. And I'm putting forward the second part of the motion because I really do think we need to review this criteria.
Councillor Yildiz?
I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Councillor Kavanagh?
Can I request that Councillor Bolton split the motion? Because I want to support part 2, but I don't want to support part 1.
Councillor Bolton, are you happy for me to allow voting on items separately? Okay. Is there a speaker against the item 1?
Against item 1? Yeah, yes. I'm against item 1 because I don't think we should make decisions like this on the run. I really don't. Sure, 95% of the time it's probably going to be fine. But I mean, if there is trouble at that particular event and council it gets out, council waive the conditions of what we normally apply to every other group, how are we going to look? We're going to right. Whereas if a report comes to council and reviews the whole criteria for future people and says that a group like this in the future doesn't need security guards, I'm much more confident. But just making a decision because they happen to know that they can come to council and get a decision, I don't think that's the way we should be doing things.
Yes, Councillor Ratnam.
I just want to ask a question, perhaps to the mover and the officers. It seems the issue here is about cost. So one way of reducing the cost is by waiving the requirement for a security guard. Is there another way to adhere to our policy prior to our policy being changed, if it's changed at all, for the second part?
It changed in 2012.
Changed in 2012?
Yes.
But that we subsidise, we pay for that security guard. If the issue is cost, we can still have the security guard there, but we waive the cost of the security guard. Isn't that because the groups don't hire their own security guards? So that's another way of going through where we're still in keeping with our policy. The asset, the amenities protected and safe in case something happens. Not that I'm saying it will. I agree that I'd like to look at it a bit more. But if the issue is about cost, could we change a motion to just cover the cost of the security guard?
I think it sets a precedent, but I mean, we could put the motion that way.
Provide just a little bit of information.
Sure.
Over the period since I've been on council, we've often passed motions waiving the security guard requirement for all sorts of different events, evening events that are more of a fundraising nature and public meeting events. So I feel it would be discriminatory to pick on the Indigenous Social Justice Association. But also there have been a couple of other events like this climate event where we waive the security requirements.
Councillor Bolton, it's not clear how you're answering a question. It sounds like you're continuing to debate the motion, which you've already done.
I wasn't intending to do that.
Okay.
But yeah, you're questioning
so Councillor Ratnam is proposing that instead of waiving the requirement for a security guard, council instead fund the attendance of a security guard.
Or waives the fee associated with the security guard. I'm happy with either.
That seems a little bit unfair. Dawson Street Daycare Centre had a fundraiser here at Town Hall a month ago. It was a trivia night. They required 2 security guards. and they had 2 security guards. It seems a little unfair that we should now be distinguishing between them, unless, of course, you'd like to add a motion that will also subsidise them retrospectively, and that just sort of seems a bit ludicrous.
Okay, I'm not proposing an amendment, I was just asking a question about alternatives to the motion.
I also intend to speak against. Is there a speaker in favour of the motion that I can take first? No. I will say that I've consistently voted against waiving the hire of security guards, I believe. So I'm happy to be corrected on that, but this isn't a discriminatory decision. I have voted consistently because, as Councillor Bolton notes, it is very rare for us to have security incidents at our public events, and perhaps that is in fact because we have security at our public events. Ultimately, town halls and buildings of that size accommodate a certain number of people. They're public assets that we're responsible for as a council. And so the risk is there from a risk perspective in terms of accommodating a large group of people. To be able to assess whether a group is rowdy or disruptive or likely to cause a security incident is such an intangible thing to assess. To assess it on numbers of attendees is a far more tangible thing to be able to do. And so I think that the strategy that we have in place at the moment, which says there is this number of attendees, therefore there is a risk to our public asset, therefore there should be security required, is a reasonable and fair and equitable policy.
It's also the service of alcohol. They're serving alcohol.
Oh, if they're serving alcohol, then of course there needs to be security. Sorry. In my opinion.
I move a proceed with the motion be put.
Okay, procedural that the motion be put.
Can you clarify
All
that?
those in favour, I have a procedural motion. I have a procedural motion. Procedural motion is that the motion be put. All those in favour of putting the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare that carried. I will now put the motion. All those in favour of item 1. We are simply putting item 1 because they have been split. So all those in favour of item 1? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those against? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I declare that lost. We'll now go to item 2. I'm happy to also put item 2 without further debate unless, so all those in favour of item 2? 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? I declare that carried. NOM 1515, reduction in Sydney Road tram service. Councillor Bolton.
Well, this should be uncontroversial, I would assume. Simply that Council resolves to write to the Premier and the Minister for Transport, the Honourable Jacinta Allen, requesting information about the exact plans for the change in the tram services in Moreland, B, strongly protesting any reduction in the frequency of the Sydney Road tram service, C, advocating an increase in the frequency of both day and night tram services on Sydney Road, Lygon Street, Nicholson Street and Melville Road, and number 2, send a copy of the letter to all state parliamentarians.
To all local state parliamentarians.
Yeah,
so
including upper house members? Including upper house members,
Yeah.
So Brunswick, Pascoe Vale, Broadmeadows and the Northern Metro upper
that's
house.
it, yep.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Bolton.
Oh, just really, the Mayor has already made a statement in the newspapers, but the local paper, but this is really, I felt the Council should vote on the issue because I think it needs to have the weight of the whole Council, and I just think it's amazing that the state government is even considering a reduction in the frequency of trams. They're trying to justify it by saying they've got these big trams, but at the moment, the trams are generally crowded any time of the day or night you use them. And what will happen by reducing the frequency, even with bigger trams, is it will mean people will turn to other modes of transport, such as cars, that the roads are totally jammed with. And already there are times when people get left behind because of overcrowded trams at peak hour. So, and they're thrusting all the new developments on us in addition, and car parking spaces are being reduced on the basis that there's a nearby public transport network which is being reduced or not increased. So I think it's just crazy.
Councillor Kavanagh?
I'm happy with that, thanks.
Is there any further debate on this item? No. If not, I'll put to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. NOM 1615 Hope Street bus.
This is that council assist the campaign to reinstate the Hope Street bus by 1, making available a room at the Brunswick Town Hall for the next meeting of the group, 2, making available the community bus to transport elderly and infirm residents to the next meeting of the group. Maybe I should add the words if required. 3, list the next meeting of the group on the City News page of the Moreland Leader newspaper. And actually, I'm going to add a point 4, assist the group with photocopying of leaflets and letterboxing of the bus route and nearby streets in the lead up to the next campaign event.
Is there a seconder?
An amendment that the mayor letterbox the bus route.
I'm happy to second, Councillor.
Yes, I'll vote for that.
Second, Mayor.
So Councillor Ratnam
Not the
is
amendment.
seconding Councillor Bolton.
Tapanos.
Councillor Tapanos likes delegating exercise activities for some reason.
I was going to move an amendment, the former mayor.
So Councillor
Immediate
Tapanos
comment.
is proposing an amendment that the mayor letterbox. So I'm happy to do it. I'll door knock them if you like. There is, I think he's withdrawn his amendment.
Photocopying of leaflets and letterboxing of the bus route.
By the mayor.
It's just a point. I've
Yes.
seconded the motion, but not speaking to it against it, just in terms of clarifying that final point. My understanding is that type of assistance can take a couple of forms, either us helping with the photocopying or making available a small sum of money so that the group can source that. So I'm just wondering, should we specify that, up to, or assist directly or indirectly through the sum of up to $300 for photocopying and leafleting, is just to make it more detailed, is because I'm not sure that gives us enough direction. Officer?
Yes, the CEO.
Just through the Mayor, I think that raises the concern about the addition of that point, is that there are resources attached with that, and it's not so much the photocopying but also the letterboxing, and what does that actually mean? So if that's officers out there letterboxing, and that's how it could be interpreted, that's a resource that's probably actually more than what we've currently already put in the financial outcomes. So for a notice of motion, we need to be able to advise you what those resources are. Now, if you specify a limit, that then provides some boundary, but the issue of just sort of having the statement without either information on what that means or a limit, I think would be an issue.
Can I recommend that dot 4 be removed and replaced with that council grants a quick response grant of $500 to assist with the production and distribution of leaflets.
Up to 500 as required.
As required. Is that amendment suitable to the mover?
I'm just concerned it may be enough or maybe not enough. I'd actually consider $1,000. I don't know how big the
That's the most quick response grant, maximum.
500.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then.
Yeah, I don't think Hope
I think
Street
it'd
is
be
so
enough,
long that
yeah.
it would take. Yeah,
Okay.
I think we can print cheaper than that. Can I ask, because the report actually doesn't talk about the meeting, the report talks about the Hope Street bus campaign, but we know that last council meeting I was requested
And
to
this
write.
motion came out of that.
Yes, and so I'm just, what is this meeting that the group is having, and what is its purpose given that there's been a commitment to reinstate the Hope Street bus route already?
Okay, maybe I might speak to this, and there are 2 other councillors who are present at the meeting, Councillor Ratnam and Councillor Tabernos. So this, I moved this motion because I attended a meeting of the Hope Street bus campaign, and there were quite a few people there. I don't know, didn't count, I did count, I think, but something around 40, 50. And which was quite good considering it was sort of like virtually single-handed effort of one of the residents to pull a meeting together. At that meeting, they did ask for council to assist. So the purpose of the meeting is because they've been trying to get a sense of how long it will take from the state government, from the Transport Minister and the local MP about how long it might take to get it reinstated, but also in the dialogue with the Transport Minister, it seemed to be a sort of maybe instead of a bus, it might be community taxi rather than a bus. So it seemed that maybe, and it might just be the person they spoke to in the office, they were very concerned that maybe it was slipping off the promise list and, may not actually happen. So that was the motivation of the residents to organise the meeting, is my understanding. And so there, I don't imagine it's going to be a group that's going to have lots and lots of meetings and activity that we would need to fund and support, but because a lot of the residents are fairly infirm and so forth. But it is, the meeting did request some assistance along these lines from the council to support another activity because, a lot of the people, not all of the people, but a lot of the people who use the service were elderly and infirm.
Okay. I'll take further speakers and then I'll weigh in. Councillor Ratnam?
Look, I reiterate what Councillor Bolton said in terms of the need for these next steps. One of the reasons we put this on the table, I believe, was a procedural move we asked for, was to give time for the letter to be sent and responded to from the state government. I'm not sure whether we've received
It's been
response.
sent, but I haven't received a response. No.
So we wanted to give time for the letter to be sent first as our first point of advocacy. And now the second part is about supporting this group of residents to continue their advocacy campaign. And it is a hard campaign for them to fight. They have been made a promise, but they feel like that promise is wavering and they want some certainty around it. It is, it's one of those issues where it really does mean the difference between somebody having a better quality of life or not. I know that sounds quite dramatic, but for the residents who came to that meeting, it was very clear, and it has been very clear from the outset of this campaign, that bus does provide such vital access for a group of residents, particularly older residents with poor mobility. That is their only public transport route and therefore their only transport route, particularly out of that Brunswick West, northern Brunswick West area. So it was quite clear that we need to provide more support, and I'm glad that we gave it some time to see what the response from the state government is like, but I still don't think that they have made a firm commitment about when it's going to be delivered. They haven't retracted it, but it also could mean that they're going to deliver it in 5 years, which is just too late for many of these residents need it urgently. So I think this step is important, and I think the reason why we want to provide support to this campaign is because they have very limited resources by themselves and need some extra assistance, unlike other groups who have a bit more capacity and resource.
Councillor Tapanos.
Thank you. I was also in attendance with Councillor Ratnam and Councillor Bolton at the meeting, and I can confirm that there were a significant amount of residents, and you really did look by having a look at the room that the bus was certainly needed. I assisted one resident in organising a taxi for him in order to get to their back home, and the taxi took a long time on Sydney Road for such a small trip, and it was difficult to get a taxi. Many taxi drivers wouldn't accept the fare. So you do see how it is needed and how a lot of transport options are really not capable of looking after that demographic. Taxis, as I said, the fares are too small. The walk required, particularly there is significant uphill from, say, the freeway up until Melville Road on Hope Street, and that is impacting people's ability to walk and a whole range of other reasons, which is making this group of residents socially isolated without the bus. I do support the motion and the additional resources to go to assist the campaign. And I am hopeful, and I do strongly believe, that in the upcoming state budget, which will be handed down in May, the Hope Street bus will hopefully be funded. So I envisage that this might be a session to provide more information about where the campaign is at, but also more information after the state budget's been announced about where this campaign is going, or it could actually end up being a bit of a celebration of the Hope Street bus coming back if it is indeed announced in the upcoming state budget. So, so I endorse this motion to the council, and I think that it's critically important, and it was really really good to see so many people that were so passionate and made such an effort to get to the last meeting. So I hope we can assist them to make their life a little bit easier in the future.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Tavnos. And I do want to clarify that I am very supportive of the Hope Street bus campaign, and I guess my concern is these elderly and infirm residents continuously coming to public meetings, and I guess being concerned that this isn't going to be delivered when there has been a commitment made, and hopefully it would be upon us to continue to pressure and push that fact, rather than on them to feel that they have to come out of their houses and come to town halls and sort of continue to push for it. It seems like the campaign's ramped up more after a commitment's been made to deliver the Hope Street bus service. So I just worry that they're concerned unnecessarily when the commitment has been made, and then it's really just more on us to determine when that commitment is going to be delivered. But having said that, I'm supportive of the campaign and happy to vote in favour of this. And indeed, if it does pass, I'm very happy to go and do the letterboxing. So more than happy to. So look, if there's no further discussion, I'm happy to put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried. NOM 1715, forced closure of remote Aboriginal communities. Councillor Bolton.
Only two more. The council writes to the federal
Oh, you've got a couple of general businesses after that as well. Sorry,
that covered at the residents' meeting. Don't have residents' meetings and then you won't get motions. The council writes to the Minister for Indigenous Affairs, the Honourable Nigel Scullion, the West Australian Premier, the Honourable Colin Barnett, local federal ministers and Victorian senators protesting the forced closure of Aboriginal communities in Western Australia. And I'd like to add two extra points. One, so make that point one. Point two, seek support from the MAV and VLGA for a statement of opposition to the forced closures. And three, send a letter of support to the Aboriginal communities under threat.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Gillies. Councillor Bolton.
I think as a local government body, we should express solidarity to other local government bodies. And I mean, I think if there was a plan to shut down 150 little country towns like the one that I come from, there would be uproar in Australia. And this is a group of people who've already been displaced at least once, maybe more than once before. They're getting their lives back together in these communities. All of the health outcomes for Aboriginal people living in these communities is much better than in the big towns. And I gather some towns are not small. There's a town of or Aboriginal community of 600 or 700 people that has art galleries and so forth that is slotted to be closed down. One area of Western Australia, there are 3 small communities. The Aboriginal communities in that area are being closed down, but the white communities of a similar size are not being closed down. So, I mean, it's a huge act of discrimination. And I think, we'd be, if the government came in and decide to close down all the local governments, local councils in Victoria, we'd be screaming, and justifiably so. And I think our council should, should support, express solidarity with these communities and oppose what's being put forward to these communities.
Thank you. Councillor Yildiz?
I'm supporting what Councillor Bolton said, although I disagree. Probably a lot of people would be happy if local governments got shut down everywhere.
Okay. Is there any debate around this motion? No? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those opposed? I declare that carried unanimously.
Would that be, recorded unanimously? Yes. Thanks. Okay, so one last one, and this is about more to do with the area near John Faulkner Hospital. The council places a traffic counter on the corner of Station Street and Moreland Road, Brunswick, which is capable of counting trucks and cars separately.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Yildiz. Before we continue, councillors, I do require a motion to extend the meeting. Moved by Councillor Yildiz. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Kavanagh. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those against? I declare the meeting closed at 11:45 p.m.
Pasco Valley.
Thank you for joining us, people video streaming at home.
Retrospectively done.
Yeah, we missed our Pasco Valley enabled facility, not going to get their thing.
Resume your seats. Where's Councillor Kavanagh? Okay, all those in favour of extending the meeting by
Please
a
extend for
further
Pasco Vale
30 minutes.
Art Group, please.
Yep,
Otherwise,
I moved it, but I didn't put my hand up to vote.
Okay, all those in favour of extending the meeting? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All the 7. All those against?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. I declare the meeting
okay,
reopened.
we'll do it as quick as we can. I mean, we've got those confidential items that are important.
That's right.
Marco, do you need to count us down?
We're back on.
Oh, hello people at home. Sorry about that. We've decided to resume the meeting, having had a division called and deciding to return. 6 councillors voted in, no, 7 voted in favour of continuing the meeting. So we're continuing. NOM 9, oh no, we're on the traffic counter.
Shall I explain the reason why I'm putting it forward?
I think everyone
Councillor
understands.
Bolton, do you
It's
feel
like
it is
25 minutes,
necessary,
keep
given that
going.
we've all been provided with the background?
Oh, okay.
Got plenty of
Everyone's read the back.
Yeah. Oh, that was the division. The division was on the extension of time. Thank you to the member of the gallery. So, unless people feel that it's necessary to have discussion on items, I am going to ask you to reserve discussion so that we can just vote on things. Councillors have been provided with a background to notices of motion. So I'm going to put the traffic counter. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Notice of motion 1915, free use of Pasco Vale neighbourhood facility.
I move the motion as printed on page 440 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Davidson. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Thanks.
All those opposed? I declare that carried.
Down to-
We move to general business. Councillor Bolton, do you have any general business items?
I've just got one, although, do you want to deal with the leave of absence first?
No, she's
We're
next.
open
We're
now.
here now.
We're here for an extra half an hour now.
Okay, alrighty. That a report, there's a motion from the ward meeting that I held, that a report come to council that outlines how a position of resident facilitator be created within the council structures to assist residents in responding to the planning process.
Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Bolton.
When various residents were discussing various planning issues at the North East residents ward residents meeting in Yildiz in March, one of the residents who is a doctor was thinking about how patient advocates work within a hospital, where you can have a position that's sort of a bit isolated from the functions of the hospital to advocate on behalf of patients. Now, obviously with planning, you can't have an advocate kind of position because residents have to advocate on their own behalf with planning issues. But there are so many issues, and I think every single councillor and lots of council staff would come across it, where residents don't realise that if a petition's presented, it's counted as a single objection. If there's a pro forma letter produced, it's counted as a single objection. One resident said they were told that they had to refer to the legislation in order to write their objection, and that's just a huge process. And then there are other people who want to object but they feel incapable of writing an objection because of literacy or lack of literacy. And I'm not just talking about people from a non-English speaking background, but also other people who aren't used to bureaucratic kind of English and aren't used to conversing in bureaucratic English, that need help to write down their objection, not putting words into their mouth. I mean, just facilitating them explaining what the issues are and writing it down for them, not playing an interventionist kind of role. So obviously such a position would need to have very careful guidelines because of the nature of the planning process, so it would need to have very careful guidelines, but there is clearly a need, and it might also relieve some of the planners of some of the questions they have to deal with, so that they can focus more on talking to residents and developers about the actual plans themselves for particular permits. So anyway, I thought people voted at the residents' meeting to put this forward to council, and so I'm putting it forward to council. I think it's a good idea if we can work out the parameters in a legal kind of way.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Yildiz.
I'm in support, but I don't need to speak.
Is there any debate around this item? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against?
Change your mind then.
I declare that lost. Councillor Yildiz.
Very quickly. Basically, this motion is just to request a leave of absence for 2 months. I'm leaving on the 16th of April to go to France, and I am coming back on the 22nd of June. So
Is there a seconder?
Oh, yeah.
Seconded, Councillor Tetty. Councillor Yildiz.
The background is I'm going on a personal overseas trip to France and have confirmed meetings with key French local government mayors, councillors and officials to discuss a number of progressive and successful practices around urban planning, social housing, infrastructure renewal and service provision. Where meetings have been confirmed, I will be taking some gifts from council in the spirit of good faith, and I'm happy to pay for these out of my own monies. I request a leave of absence for council from council for this period. I'll also be going, and this might be interesting for the UPC people, to have a look at some deliberative housing in Verbane, the vertical village. So.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. Is there any debate around this item? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Can I vote for myself?
Yes, you can.
Oh, great. Okay.
All those against? I declare that carried. Councillor Yildiz? Anything further?
No, that's it.
No, that's it. Okay. Councillor Kavanagh.
Mine's one that I submitted earlier today about the, actually yesterday, last night, about the Glenroy Advisory Group. So the council resolved to reinstate the status of the Glenroy briefing back to the Glenroy Advisory Committee of Council. This will ensure that the minutes of these meetings will be presented to council for ratification as part of the committee to council reports, and that the attendance of these meetings will be included in the Assembly of Council records.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Davidson. Is there any further discussion?
No, I think it's self-explanatory.
No. If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Councillor Kavanagh?
No, that's all for me.
Councillor Ratnam?
I have a general business item that was circulated to councillors earlier today regarding the East Brunswick Village and calling for a report. I won't detail all the points because it's quite lengthy, looking at the impact of the East Brunswick Village development, particularly on the bike path, but also other infrastructure needs in that area. I want to move a slight amendment to the preface in when it says council resolves to receive a report, just based on some advice. I just want to change that to that council resolves to receive a report that addresses the following questions or covers the scope of resources required to address the issues as outlined below, and then the dot points to follow. So that basically gives us the scope. If we can't complete it within the report, it'll outline what we'll need to complete that task.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Is seconded by Councillor Lenka Thompson. Is there any further discussion around this item? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Anything further, Councillor Ratnam? Councillor Davidson? Councillor Tapanos?
Yes. I move that council writes to the Minister for Transport and the State Member for Brunswick and VicTrack, calling on them to begin a discussion about further measures to improve the upfield bike path, including widening the path by adding 2 more lanes and improving the surface. If I have a second, I'll speak further.
Seconded, Councillor
I'll
Bolton.
second if you want to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. That offer is not accepted.
No deal.
Councillors, we've heard recently that the state government is investing $1.6 million of investment into Sydney Road to improve safety. Now that is safety more broadly, safety for certainly people on bikes, but also pedestrians and vehicle users. And certainly as part of that review and as part of many previous motions from this council calling for investigations into Sydney Road, we would see some very tangible outcomes, I believe. But in regards to this motion, and the reason why I bring this to the chamber tonight is because I do feel, and I've come to the conclusion after having walked and cycled along the upfield bike path, that it is at capacity. And that's very clear. And council has done some significant work on the path over its lifespan by certainly repairing the path, but also filling the gaps. And I believe it was only 2 or 3 years ago since we sort of completed another section that takes it up to Box Forest Road. So we've invested a lot of money in this piece of cycling infrastructure over many years. And now I think it's time for the state government to contribute and see whether it is possible to grant council some land, some VicTrack land that is used along the rail reserve to actually extend and put more lanes on the upfield bike path. So we can have 2 lanes going up and 2 lanes going down. And I think that is going to cater for the extra capacity that is certainly required. Brunswick has one of the highest proportions of cyclists in all of Melbourne. So we really need to be investing in this type of infrastructure, and I hope that this letter is received positively by the state government and we have some positive results in the future, not just in granting the land, but also some assistance hopefully to be able to construct or widen the bike lanes there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Bolton?
I support what Councillor Tapanos said. I just suddenly realised one little bit about the adding of 2 more lanes. I mean, it's probably okay. I mean, I think one of the issues isn't just more lanes for cyclists, but separating pedestrians and cyclists from each other. I mean, that's one of the issues in the upfield bike path, but I guess that could be done by adding 2 more lanes. So, I mean, I don't have anything else to add. I know there is going to be a review of the upfield bike path, but I think it's so clear that it needs to be widened that I think advocating around this issue even before this report comes back is worthwhile.
Councillor Ratnam?
Just to clarify one point, I believe that point 2 has been removed from the
Yes, that's
resolution.
right, yeah.
We're not calling the report anymore. And I just want to note, as Councillor Bolton just outlined, we are conducting an audit, and we outlined an investment of significant resources at our last council meeting where we had some of this discussion, and I'm quite supportive of continuing our advocacy. I'd like the last point actually to also mention that the measures to improve the upfield bike path will be in keeping with what we decide post the audit, because that was a process we outlined, that we do the audit, then we'd have the public meeting based on the recommendations, then continue the advocacy. So I just like there to be some consistency between the different parts of the advocacy we're doing. So I think some reference to the audit findings would be beneficial as well. I'm not proposing any deletion. But
Yeah, I envisage this to be a letter that can be sent out
Okay.
as soon as possible, that's all. Not necessarily waiting for any outcomes of future processes.
Thank you, Councillors Ratnam and Tapanos. If there's no further discussion, I will put this to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Councillor Tapanos?
Thank you, Mayor. I propose that Council write to the VEC requesting them to look into the possibility of conducting a subdivision review or representation review of Moreland due to the high population growth in Brunswick.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Tapanos?
Thank you, Mayor. I was interested to read today in the City News of the Moreland Leader about Moreland's population growth, and I was quite taken back by, in particular, up to 4% annual growth in Brunswick East, but 2.2% right across the city. Certainly, to many people who live and walk around the streets, and particularly our major activity centres, it wouldn't be a surprise, because we do see the increase in development, we do see the apartments going up, and we do realise that our city has changed. It has changed significantly, and it's changed significantly even over the last few years. So particularly the Brunswick East Village was approved at the last meeting of the Urban Planning Committee, but residents have just moved in the last couple of years into the Tip-Top development. There's also other major developments occurring on Brunswick Road and on Nicholson Street. Of course, our Bree Street developments, which are ongoing. So the population of Brunswick in particular is growing at an unbelievable rate. The last representative review that determined Moreland's ward boundaries was in 2011. So councillors, we're not due to have another review into 2017 or 2018. However, I do believe, and it may be the case, that particularly in the South Ward, the population has grown so much that it does warrant a review from the VEC to see whether the proportions which are outlined in the Act are still there. Now, these proportions are designed to ensure that there is fair and equal representation across the city. So in seeking this review, we would need to ensure that, in seeking that this review occur, the first steps will be to determine whether the population and enrolment growth in Brunswick in particular, or should I say in the South Ward, is outside of those limits. If the answer is yes to that, then a review should occur. Certainly if the answer is no, then the review probably can wait until the next scheduled representative review after the next election. But I feel that there's been significant growth and it warrants asking the question.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Yildiz? Is there any debate around this item? Councillor
I'll
Kavanagh?
speak against the motion, right?
Yes.
Because the VEC have got it quite clear that you have two elections before you do the review. We've only just had the first time that residents have got used to the new wards in North West Ward and North East Ward and South Ward, because it's changed as well. So all three wards changed at the last election. This review will mean potential that they're going to change it again at the very next election. The VEC have their reasons for having 8-year gaps in between, and I think that we should stick with that.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Is there a speaker in favour? No, if there's no further discussion, I'll put it to the vote.
No, I'll close the debate since there's been debate. Yes, thank you. There is a couple of things. There is a representation review that looks at all of the ward structures and the amount of councillors, but there is also a subdivision review. And the purpose of the subdivision review is to take into consideration circumstances such as these. Ones where we're not due for the representation review before the next election, but where there has been significant growth. And look, it may not be the case. We may still be within the 10% threshold in Brunswick, but with all of the development that is occurring, I have a feeling that we're probably not. Considering in that review in 2011, the South Ward was slightly in the positive. It had slightly more proportionally, I guess, yes, more residents, and I feel that perhaps in that review, and I do remember submitting as part of the process, that there was an expectation that Pentridge would be fully developed. There was an expectation that Coburg Initiative would have taken off. There was an expectation that the school site across the road would have been developed by now, but we haven't seen any of this being developed. But what we have seen is a significant amount of developments in the south. So I think it probably does warrant for us to investigate whether those margins have changed. And you are talking about residents. Well, I can tell you that because the northern border of the South Ward was Albion Street, it caused huge confusion, which resulted in numerous complaints to the VEC about queues, about people not knowing what ward they were in. So I do feel that the borders could have been better determined, and I do feel that some of the assumptions of the VEC at the time have probably not materialised. So it might be an interesting exercise. It may not be the case, it may not eventuate if we're within the 10% threshold, but it's worth checking.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that lost. Any further items, Councillor Tapanos?
I rise to also speak about one that has come about because I see
please put the motion and then you can speak to it.
Sorry. Is this one up? Is this one being amended slightly?
They need to be AM.
Yes, please.
12:05 PM.
Yes.
They're AM.
That council resolved to call for a report outlining the items that have been funded from the Open Space Contribution Fund since 2012 and the proposed expenditure allocated against the Open Space Contribution Fund in the Strategic Resource Plan and the 5-year Capital Works Plan, that's B, options for the use of the Open Space Contribution Fund and implications of using the fund for the purchase of open space. C, options to identify and pursue land acquisitions in priority areas of the Moreland Open Space Strategy. D, the adoption of a new policy position to only, sorry, I don't think D is relevant there. We've stuck, we end at C.
And it's that's right. That's right.
Oh, sorry. There is D. There is a D.
There is a D,
Which is working with Vic Roads, Vic Track, and the state government to identify public land that could be used for open space.
Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll make it a second.
Seconded, Councillor Yildiz.
Councillors, this is a really important. Open space in our city is really important. We did develop in 2012 the Moreland Open Space Strategy, and the strategy identifies that areas in Pascoe Vale in particular and areas in Brunswick East in particular don't have a lot of open space. In fact, in some areas, it takes residents 500 metres or 600 metres walking to actually reach a park or reach some open space. And the strategy identifies this as completely unacceptable. Furthermore, to add to the problem, we have seen huge amounts of population growth. And most of those new residents, particularly in Brunswick East, in developments like the Brunswick East Village or Tip Top, are living in apartments. And they're living in apartments which are like small shoeboxes in some of these developments. Some are better than others, admittedly, but they all lack adequate provisions of open space. Apartment living does lack open space, and therefore it is incumbent upon council to see to it that we do provide more open space opportunities for these residents. But these residents are already using a lot of our local parks. And because there is extra usages of those parks, extra demand for sporting facilities on those parks, extra demand for community facilities on those parks, it is lessening the availability of the remainder of the residents to enjoy the open space that they used to take for granted. Now, I believe that developers should contribute more fairly and more equitably to open space provision in the city. But unfortunately, what we've seen happen is a lot of that money that is collected through the open space contribution is spent on new projects in existing parks, whereas it should be spent, in my view, on creating new parks, on purchasing more land. And I think that that is a very important point. We're not going to raise enough money to purchase strategic parcels of land and convert it to open space, particularly in areas of Brunswick East, which are so expensive, if we keep year after year digging in during our budget process, digging in and taking money away from the fund. We need to allow it to build up so we can make strategic purchases. When developers are contributing to this fund, they expect council to be creating new open space for existing and new residents. And sadly, I don't feel that we've been able to achieve that. And certainly, I can't think of any acquisitions that have occurred in the two most identified areas in our strategy, Brunswick East and Pascal Vale. I think we need to support this motion, send a clear view that this area is important and we need to prioritise that money for its right purpose, the purpose it was intended, the creation of new open space.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Kavanagh.
I'm going to speak against the motion. Actually, the open space strategy actually points to Glenroy number one. And since that's been written, we've purchased 18,000 square metres of land at Northern Golf Course and the Glenroy Primary School from that fund. I would agree with you if we were taking the entire fund, but we're not. We're taking a small section of that fund, doing improvements to our open space, and we're having a bank at the moment to also buy open space. I think we've got the balance right.
Thank you. Is there any further debate on this item? Councillor Tapanos, do you wish to close the debate?
Yeah, look, councillors, what I'm seeking here is ultimately information to enable us to make a decision. You do say that that we have used it significantly for new acquisitions in Glenroy. That may be the case, but how much money has actually come out of the fund and where's it been spent? So there's an accountability aspect of it here, because it is way too easy, particularly when the budget gets constrained, to say we're going to fund these lots of projects out of open space fund when they used to be funded by rates in order to put that money into other projects. And I think that this has happened year after year after year, and a significant amount of money, particularly in the past, has been taken from this fund. And we are missing out on opportunities. We had an opportunity to purchase a property in Brunswick East. We were far from the winning bidder, far from it. We came nowhere close. And that is because we didn't have the money, and that is because we kept digging into this fund for other projects. If we are going to create more space, and I see in the paper, it is projected that our population could increase by about 38,000 people, many of these new residents living in apartments. If we are going to create some new parks, if we are going to have some new open space, well, we've got to make the hard decisions and say this fund is going for new acquisitions, new open space.
Thank you, Councillor Taverneau. He was actually closing the debate. So I'll now put it to the vote.
Can I have a procedural motion that we vote on them separately?
Sure, I'll just allow voting on them separately. So point A, all those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We'll just scroll to point B. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that lost. Point C. All those in favour? All. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? I declare that carried. Point D. All those in favour? 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? I declare that carried. Councillor Tapanos?
No further items, thanks.
Okay, the time is now 12:15, and I require a further extension of the time of the meeting, councillors. Unfortunately, there are some confidential business items that it's imperative that we address this evening. So can I please have a moved Councillor Kavanagh, somebody to second. Seconded Councillor Rob Thompson. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those against? 1, 2, 3. I declare that carried. Councillor Tetty, any general business? Councillor Lenka Thompson, Councillor Rob Thompson.
I would like to tender my resignation from the
No.
Please don't.
Committee.
Moreland Arts
Oh, really?
Board because I cannot attend all of those meetings. I've missed half and I'm not adding value, and we have 2 other worthy councillors on that don't need me there.
Okay, it is so noted. Or do we require a motion to accept?
No, I don't believe you.
It is so noted. Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
I also have another general item that Council wrote to the Prime Minister, Minister of Education, Minister for Social Services and the Honourable Kelvin Thompson seeking a commitment to continue funding of universal access to 15 hours of kindergarten.
I will second this because I enjoy writing to the Minister for Social Services.
Excellent. This has been funded by, 10 hours are funded by state government and a further 5 are funded by the Commonwealth. Commonwealth seems to be getting a discount. This has been a fantastic program and well received by parents and children alike, and I would like to think that it will continue, but it doesn't look like the government may fund it, but we should continue to
Yes, we get it.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Is there any further discussion around this item? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Anything further, Councillor Thompson? Councillor Yildiz. Excellent. Could I please have a motion to close the council meeting to the public in accordance with section... Moved Councillor Kavanagh, seconded Councillor Yildiz. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Thank you very much to the members of the gallery who so patiently stuck with us. Thank you.